I am managing partner at Hazard Ventures, which is a private investment company that I co-own with a fourth generation member of one of the UK's larger consumer families, who's a private investor and entrepreneur in his own right, focused on emerging markets, infrastructure service support businesses. And I am also an investment partner to a Malaysian single family office that's run out of a Singapore regulated asset management business focused on mid to late stage technology investments, and have a personal portfolio of earlier stage and philanthropically and sustainably minded businesses that I support.
Perfect. And then if you look back on 2020, your biggest, or let's say your best or worst decision, or both?
Well, circumstances have rather dictated the course of 2020. It's not been an easy year for everyone, and easily the best decision for me has been doubling down on time spent with my kids. But that's not necessarily an investment decision. The worst decision is probably not doubling down on Tesla stock, I think. As someone who's passionate about what sustainability can do for the world, I wish I'd bought more and held it for longer. And you know, I think there's an exciting wave coming, but that's probably the biggest regret.
Well, in terms of the waves that are coming, how do you see 2021? Is there a particular wave you want to ride or avoid?
Okay, so I think 2021 is going to be a really interesting year. I think that I'm not a public markets investor per se. I focus on venture and private equity deals from the earlier stage through to late stage. Some of the public holdings that I'm involved with stem out of IPO positions that are recent history IPOs that then go public and are held. But inherently, that's not the side of the investment world that I'm focused on. I do not fully understand the public markets and the way that they're pricing in COVID-19 and its impact. And I think that that will be a big impact on the world for longer than many people expect in 2021. Lots of people I'm talking to are talking about the world opening up, and yesterday Singapore announced that it was getting the Davos World Economic Forum, or sorry, the World Economic Forum was coming to Singapore rather than going to Davos. And that's obviously going to be interesting because I don't know what it is. It's maybe 20,000 people normally descend on Davos for a week in January. Let's assume that 20,000 are going to come, or maybe half that number, or 15,000 are going to come to Singapore, and it's delayed till May. And will that herald the reopening of the world? I don't think so. I don't think the world's going to fully open up until at least Q3, probably Q4. And that's going to have a lot of impacts on many things. So I'm still pessimistic, and I don't really understand the stock market rally that came with the announcement of the vaccines around airlines, cruise, hospitality. Despite having in a past life worked in the hospitality sector, I'm still fundamentally quite pessimistic about that. I'm positive about the COVID bounce on things like healthcare, education, internet-enabled consumer services. I think that that's going to be huge growth. And sitting here in Asia, I'm really most positive about the prospects for Asia, because Asian markets, not across the board, but some of the key markets have weathered COVID the best. Mm-hmm. I think that they also have baked in resiliency in terms of the general consumer growth trend, that they've got more room to grow, and the retractions, will be less sharp and less long felt here in Asia, I feel.
Thank you. You mentioned impact a couple times, but if you touch on either philanthropy is what, or a social development goal that you're focused on this coming year, and what your goals are for that?
So I spend most of my time focusing on impact across the piece. So I have involvement in companies in agri-biotech, which are addressing, resource efficiency. Forgive me, it should spring to mind exactly the SDG number that is. From a philanthropic standpoint, I've been an early investor in and supporter of a disability inclusion accelerator and incubator based out of the UK. I come from a background as a
What
British
is
Army.
that called? Which one?
It's called Kaleidoscope Group. It's a very early stage business. And under that, we have Kaleidoscope Investments, Kaleidoscope Recruitment, and Kaleidoscope Advisory, the three arms of the business, as well as a foundation, which is pure philanthropy. And our goal with that is to ameliorate outcomes for people with disability and people serving the disability economy, which is a fundamentally underserved market, 1.6 billion people. One thing that COVID has done is it's highlighted the stark divisions in society, and with lockdowns that have been going all around the world, that's created a dual impact for people with disability. In some ways, it has brought them more into focus because they've been more able to work when they haven't had to commute. They've been able to be in their safe space at home, but equally, it's also marginalized some people and isolated them tremendously. And I come from a background as an army officer. I did that before I got into the world of family business and family investment. And I support Kaleidoscope because many young men and women who served in the armed forces of many nations, not least the US and the UK and our allies in Australia and Canada, have suddenly found themselves living with disability after tragic incidents or operation incidents. And so it's an important factor for me. I personally, give it my all to make sure that that business gets all the support it can.
And in terms of supporting you, how can we help you?
Listen, we are actively always engaged in conversations with peers in the private investment sphere, whether it's with the Malaysian Family Office, where we actively seek co-investors into deals, which we are underwriting and sponsoring, spanning mid to late stage socially impactful businesses. Or in the earlier stage portfolio that I drive through Hazard Ventures, our model is a co-investment model. So we're not an investment fund. We're not seeking to manage other people's capital. We're seeking to find other aligned people and do deals together. And so we're always happy to talk to anyone. And I'm also always very happy. I don't pretend to be an expert in anything, but I'm happy to provide insight or connectivity in terms of Asia, the Middle East, where I used to be. And by the same token, I'd be delighted to be in touch with anyone from 361 and understand what they're looking for, or see if I can add value in some way.
Perfect. And then if you have one word for 2021.
Reset. I think it's the greatest opportunity we have in our lifetime. And I'm, entering middle age in 2021. I'll turn 40. And my abiding mission is to provide some kind of living legacy to my kids, to say, when we hand over the reins of personal wealth and our impact on society and the world at large, it's to hand over something that they can succeed to. And so I think there's going to be a huge amount of opportunity around innovative biotechnologies, things that are going to replace resources that are feeding into our consumer supply chains. And I think we're starting to see the green shoots of it. And going back to and touching upon the institutional asset management world, which I'm have very little exposure to, but I do think that institutional managers are starting to sit up and take notice of the opportunities around sustainability and impact in a proper way, which is not just talking about it and greenwashing and writing ESG reports, but it's actually deploying dollars. And I think that's the big opportunity.